everybody has an equal chance. And by doing so, we've hoped to not erase, but make amends with our not-so-good history. As a country, we do strive for equality, and standing against our anthem is standing against that message of equality. Collins' statement also comes with the message that our anthem speaks pro-slavery ideals. Now, again, this couldn't be more wrong. While the song was originally penned by an author who may have had some more racist ideals, that does not mean that the song inherently is racist. You see, just as any other living document, such as our Constitution or our Declaration of Independence, it is a living document, and therefore its interpretation is allowed to change as times change and as ideals change throughout a country. When we sing the anthem, we're not singing it as it was written, we're singing it as it means to us today, as a reflection of our modern stance on all beliefs. Because things do change, and often for the better. We, as a country, no longer believe in slavery, and so therefore our national anthem doesn't represent pro-slavery ideals. If anything, it stands as a marker of our origins, our not so happy past. Put simply, when we sing of our current official policies and not the policies of the past. So, if that all stands, then you might ask, what is the origin of this discontent, this inequality, this perceived inequality? Well, I think a lot of it comes from the heightened tensions that our country's experienced since our 9/11 disaster. You see, police brutality has become an increasing problem and has been talked about increasingly. Yes? Oh, okay. I'll ask a question. After being arrested, African Americans are what % more likely than whites to be detained? Does anybody know? Okay, the answer to that is 33%. A 1986 article titled "How Reasonable is the Reasonable Man" attacks the point that a dual standard does exist with our police officers, as they are expected to aggressively enforce laws against criminals, and yet to be reasonable and show restraint in dealing with citizens on an everyday basis. The Department of Justice has an article, or has the piece titled "The Police Misconduct Provision," which states that what police officers cannot do and what qualifies as assault or battery and whatnot. And I found it interesting that they said you must show pattern or practice and that it cannot be an isolated event. This is also to protect cops, but does have its drawbacks. The reality is that racism has nothing to do with the problem. The issue is fear. We are afraid, and in our fear we act out of instinct of self-preservation, and not out of hidden ideals of racism. Ever since 9/11, tensions have been high, and police have been militarizing themselves more and more by using automatic weapons, bulletproof vests, and other equipment that previously was only for soldiers.
Next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Derek. I don't know about you guys, but for a long time I thought that racism was a thing of the past. But unfortunately, I do not believe that this is the case. Social media has played a large role in the spread of graphic videos of African Americans being harmed by police officers. So in this presentation, I will be addressing how long these events have been occurring, the fact that athletes are sitting for more than just racism, and specific athletes who are deciding to take a stand, but not literally, of course. Like I said, racism has been around forever, and it's still prominent in today's society. In 2002, two men named Burns and Crawford wrote a book called Policing and Violence. In that book, even though it was written 14 years ago, They explained that it's an accepted fact that the rate of African Americans shot or killed by police far exceeds the rate at which whites are harmed. And that's really disproportionate to the representation of them in our society. And as most of you guys know, slavery ended in 1865, and we're right now 150 or so years later, and racism is still very alive and active. We, as a generation, are consumed by social media, and so every wrongdoing that the police undertakes is publicized before our eyes. And because of that, this trend has gained a lot of supporters, and that includes professional athletes. They understand that racism should be in the past, and it should be part of history instead of current times. A man named Thomas Peacock explained in his 2011 journal entry called "I Share a Dream, How Can We Eliminate Racism?" that people are confronted with racism every day, even though it manifests itself in different ways. There's a type of racism called institutional racism, and that's where it's most commonly found in schools, but it's also in government, art, history, music, and languages. And I pretty much just said all of the aspects of our society. In the third stanza of the national anthem, we can see that there's a racist line in there, and that's why the professional athletes are remaining seated. In live TV, they're doing it on live TV to gain attention for the cause, and hopefully influence others to take a stand in what they believe. Megan Rapinoe is one of these athletes. She explained to Victoria Mather September 16th in an article called "Megan Rapinoe wearing a U.S. uniform kneels for the national anthem," that as a gay American, she understands what it means to look at the flag and not have it protect her liberties. But I'm going to take a step back, and how many of you guys know who Megan Rapinoe is? Okay, she's on the U.S. women's soccer team, and she's played in the Olympics for multiple years now, and she's a good aspect to their team. And she's actually from Reading, which is an hour and 15 minutes north from here, and that's actually where I'm from, so that's why I decided to talk about her. She's experienced a lot of discrimination based off of her sexuality, and she's decided to join the movement, even though it started off as just for getting rid of racism, but it's also becoming more for discrimination in general. So she thinks that it's hypocritical by saying land of the free when really it's not free because she's being discriminated against. So she decided to take action and publicize, and she doesn't want to tolerate discrimination of any type, and that she wants it to be addressed and everyone to understand what's going on. So imagine that you're walking down a street and you see a young girl on the side of the road, and she's getting picked on by, I don't know, a few bullies or something. So most of us, I think, would stop and be you bullies need to stop, this is not okay. But that's pretty much what the athletes are doing. They're taking a stand and kneeling during the national anthem to say that they are against discrimination and racism. So it's been around for so long, and things need to change. And it's sort of sad how it's been 150 years and it's taken that long to start to get recognized. Professional athletes want to eliminate brutality, and they're starting a movement to do so. So thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Tristan.
Thanks, Madison. So in today's society, you hear left and right. Black men shot, killed by white police officers, all the way from California to New York. But there are many misconceptions about police brutality in the news, and I'm here to clear some of those up. According to the Washington Post Police Shooting Database, which is ongoing since January of 2015, 1,500 people were shot and killed by police. Of the 1,500 people, 732 were white and 381 were black. Now, in order to accurately compare how often white people were shot compared to black people, you would have to account for the proportions of the population. Because there are nearly 160 million more white people than there are black Americans, white people make up 62% of the overall population and 49% of the victims who were shot and killed by police. But black people make up 13% of the overall population, but it's a larger 24% of those shot by police. Now, Cody Ross, who is a graduate student at UC Davis, published in a journal PLOS ONE an analysis of all the people who were killed and victims of police brutality. In that black people were 3.5 times more likely to be victims of police brutality than a white person. But the media relies heavily on the ignorance of most Americans by purposefully leaving out the proportions of Americans that are black and white. And the claim is then debunked to be circumstantial. Now, there's a lot of unrest about police brutality in the black community, but you never hear about it in the white community. Because there's an uneven distribution of news coverage for the black community compared to the white community. Now, both sides of this issue have their merits. The Star Spangled Banner did have roots in racism and the murder of slaves. However, we cannot view the song as the same context as when it was written. Rather, it should be viewed as a living document and interpreted in modern times. And let's face it, racism and prejudice is still alive and kicking in today's society, as shown by Madison and Tessa. And the many athletes who refuse to stand for the national anthem are not doing so just for police brutality. There's a multitude of reasons, going as far as racism, and they're looking for equality, for racial and sexual equality. They're just trying to bring about a change in today's society. And they're doing so by, protesting and kneeling during the national anthem. Now, we may not all agree with their methods of protest, but as given out by the First Amendment in the Constitution, we have a right to protest, a right to free speech. And that is the basis at which the U.S. was built upon. So we must respect their right to protest.